My name is Batya Medad.
I'm Yisrael and Batya Medad. We're currently now in Shiloh. I've been here with my wife and family since 1981.
After the birth of our first son, fourth child, we were in Shiloh. And we've been in Shiloh ever since. That's the longest we've ever lived any place.
I think the three things that drew us here is, number one, the biblical connection. No one could tell me as a Jew that I don't belong in Shiloh where the tabernacle was.
Somehow when we were introduced to Shiloh, it felt right.
The second reason was that they needed children for the school.
And then when they said they were going to open the school, that seemed good too. If it was good enough for Shmuel Hanavi, Samuel the prophet, it certainly should be good enough for our kids.
And the third is that we ended up here at the top of the hill, whereas the rest of the community was all the way down at the bottom close to the Tel. And we were one of the first 10 families up the hill. So we also wanted a bit of a pioneering.
I love living in Shiloh. I've lived in other places. I feel Shiloh and the word shalva, which means a comforting relaxation, a confidence. Shiloh is my quiet, is my peace. I found whatever I need in life here in Shiloh. I have the best neighbors in the world, the most gorgeous of you, spiritually. And this is my home. I'm just not looking for anything much else.
In terms of being worried about the future, about whether or not we'll move or have to move, I'm never worried. I'm always anxious. I'm worried about not events, but people. Do our government ministers, do our judges, do our military officers have the wisdom, the courage, and the foresight to understand exactly what's happening in this area and not be blown over by newspaper headlines or incidents that might get in the way? This is a long-term pool. We're dealing with 3,000 years previous and a long time ahead, and it's a phrase we always use that the chain is always as strong as its weakest link. We have to make sure that no one's weak, everybody has a good level of fortitude, and that we'll be able to be supported, because we know from recent events, whether it's the disengagement, whether it's Camp David, whether it's Oslo, that it's all false in terms of the peace efforts by the Arabs.
Every time there's been what's called a peace agreement, our safety has been reduced. I don't trust the government. I don't trust their judgment. I don't trust their aims. I don't trust their ego. They don't think straight. They think in terms of looking for approval. We don't need anybody's approval. We just, Yisrael Batya Hashem, Israel trusts in God.
Non-Jews in the land of Israel should be treated fairly, but more than that, we're not talking about any sort of political grants of independence, maybe autonomy, and I think that would be the best for all.
Come to Shiloh, visit, see it up close. The empty hills. This place is so empty. Now, everyone who believes that we're taking someone else's land is lying and isn't seeing what's really here. Back
when we first came here between 81 and 87, when the first Intifada broke out, we would walk through the Arab villages on Pesach and Sukkot for our semi-annual hikes, and all sorts of other elements like that. Unfortunately, one of our Arab acquaintances, a fellow by the name of Zaki, has so far, if I'm not mistaken, either twice or three times been taken to Shechem, Nablus for those who don't know, and tortured and beaten by the Arabs because they think that he's collaborating with us or giving us information. Or the term collaborate, of course, by me is a peace activist, because he's trying to get together and coexist. It's just a matter of what we call laundering language. In terms of relations with the Arabs, basically it was all destroyed, almost all destroyed, by the time the Second Intifada began.
We want the freedom, we want our civil rights. Jews have a right to civil rights. Any place in the world, if Jews were restricted the way we're restricted here, it would be considered anti-Semitism.
In Shiloh itself, we've never really had an outright terror attack. Our roads have been either stoned, Molotov cocktailed, or otherwise. We've had people who have been killed on the roads, in yeshivot, or other places. And there have been incidents in the fields, in our agricultural fields. But to say outright what most people would call a terror attack, armed violence and stuff like that, really never has been here. I think it's because of the fact that we have a different attitude. We don't have a fence around Shiloh. It's open. Our opinion is that those who should be fenced are those who are causing the violence, not those who are suffering from it. And we have had incidents in the past where we've had to, shall we say, respond to the provocations of our neighbors. I think that balance of mutual fear, perhaps, has done us well. It doesn't show up sometimes well in the press, but it protects our kids and the rest of our friends and families here in the long run, and I'm not ashamed of that. It can get out of hand, but if it's done wisely, I think that's what everybody has done in terms of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth aliyot coming back to the land of Israel from the time of modern Zionism.
Basically, every month I send out a call via the internet saying I'm going down on Rosh Chodesh to Tel Shiloh at 9:30 in the morning. I hope to finish my prayers and say Hallel, the prayer of praise, and the Musaf, the extra prayer for Rosh Chodesh, and whatever Tehillim I can say. And I bring along a list whenever I can of those Jews who aren't yet married and hopefully will be married, and even if they're not thinking of it, their mothers or aunts or good friends have them on this list.
I have preferred to use the term revenant rather than the pejorative term of settler. In my opinion, in my personal feeling, settler is a negative word, something that indicates something temporary, something that came from out of the area, and in being derogatory term, I don't like it at all. I looked around for another term, and the French word revenir originally meant to come back after a long term of absence to something that belongs to you. So I decided that the best term is a revenant resident of Judea and Samaria in the heartland of the land of Israel.
I feel free. I came from a very strongly Jewish home, not religiously observant home. My father, who was even as a child not raised to be strictly Torah observant, when he went to the American Navy, was very proudly known as the Jew. He said there may have been other Jews there, but only I was called the Jew. And now he's here in Shiloh and constantly remembering suddenly prayers that he hadn't said for years. And he's enjoying himself and he's enjoying the neighbors. And this is Judaism. This is the real life.